Okay guys, for this tutorial we are going to go over adding motion blur and tire spin to your car images. You can use this effect on any type of image, doesn't necessarily have to be a car image, but for this tutorial I think that's the best suited thing. You can obviously use this on your, your gaming photography or whatever. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, first thing you want to do is you want to open up your image. I did some editing in Lightroom on this nice image here of the Porsche, as you will see in a second. But I'm going to go over that in a different tutorial, so you can just find a nice image. I added just some HDR here, as you can see, and some light, some color flashes. Probably should have worked a little longer in Lightroom on this. It's a little sloppy, but hey, for the sake of this, it'll work. So the first thing you want to do is copy that background image and we'll call it motion blur. So you're going to head up to Filter, Blur Gallery, Path Blur. And you're going to get this little arrow thing here. This is basically the pointing to the direction of the blur that you'd be going in, right? So this car is kind of logically moving left to right here. So I'm going to add this blur in and stretch it out across the picture. Make a left to right. Now, if you hover over the first thing here, you can adjust the degree and the intensity of your blur. You can see how crazy it is right here. Don't think that's going to work, so let's bring it down to probably about 15%, give or take. Ignore the blur on the car here, guys, because we're going to remove that later. So you can kind of just play with this and get the blur how you want. There's also a bunch of settings on the right over here. The speed of the blur. Right now it's at 50. Let's move it down to 25, see what happens. Now you can see there's just kind of a subtle blur in the background. I'm going to stretch this out a little long, just to make it a little bit more. You can also, if you want, you can bend these blurs. So you can add more anchor points on this line to really get the effect you're going for. I'm gonna keep mine real simple for now. Just do a subtle kind of basic blur effect on this image of the Porsche here. That's looking good. I think I'm gonna add, let's see, a little more blur. I got a little tiny dip here. I'm just focusing on the background, like I said, guys. We're gonna remove the blur on the car, but that's looking good to me. About 21% speed. So we will leave it at that for now. All right, guys, next thing you wanna do is we're gonna remove the blur from the car. You can see the difference here, just a nice subtle blur on the background. I could certainly add more than I did, just to give it an even stronger effect. So next, to remove the blur on the car, we were going to add a layer mask to this same layer. So just click down here. Now you want to make sure your foreground color here is black, and your brush, grab your paintbrush tool, make sure it's opacity is 100, flow is 100, smoothing is 100, grab a soft brush, and then basically you just start painting over this car, and you'll see the clarity, or the original image if you will, on the layer below the layer we are working on. We are just revealing that image again. So we're just adding in the clarity back to the car, basically, removing the motion blur. Now, I'm doing this really quickly, so it's gonna look pretty sloppy. Well, it's not gonna look great anyway. So obviously you wanna take your time on this. You can adjust the size of your paintbrush if you don't know with the bracket tools. You can hold shift to do it in a straight line across like the spoiler, for example. But all in all, it's pretty simple stuff, guys. It's just a simple paintbrush. And you can already see we've added in quite a difference here. It's a cool effect. It's kind of already making it seem like the car is moving. And especially once we add in the tire spin, that'll really give it the full effect. All right, this is looking pretty good, at least for this sake. Alrighty, yep. I think that's good to go. All right, guys, so now we're gonna save this as a JPEG, because now we're gonna take it outside and add some tire spin. So save it as a JPEG, call it whatever you want. I will call this Legos, how about that? Okay, 12, make sure it's max quality, and then let's just reopen that image we just saved. Boom, okay, cool. So we've got our motion blur behind the car. If you look to the very front of the car, you'll see there's a little bit of error because I did it so quick. But anyway, okay, so let's unlock this layer and we'll call it the background image. And then let's copy it like we did before, and we will call this tire spin. Alright guys, now we're gonna go back up. I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit here. But we're gonna go back up to where we were before. Let me just get this nice and centered. Alright guys, we're gonna go back to Filter, Blur Gallery, and this time we're gonna go to Spin Blur. What this does will open up this kind of cool spin blur radial effect here. And we're gonna drag this, kind of center it the middle, right on top of this tire. And we're gonna make it smaller by going to these axis points on each side of it and just clicking and dragging, just stretch it in. You wanna make sure you grab the outside of it, otherwise you will actually bring the inside blur section. So if you do that, just hit Control-C. And then you can kind of click on the middle of it here, just outside the middle, not where that ring is, and adjust the size, right, just to get over your tire. That little ring in the middle right here that's popping up, this kind of controls the angle and the intensity, so you could get real crazy, do like some Hot Wheels stuff or whatever. Obviously, for the sake of our video, I want to make it look like this car is moving from left to right, so that we're going to try and make it look like the tires are spinning in the correct direction, right? So I'm going to bring it back around to about 17 degrees. I think that's looking pretty good. You can also come over here to the Blur tools and adjust it over here in the panel instead of doing it manually in the spin bar. Depending on which version of Photoshop, you might not get that spin bar. So if that's the case, just come over here to the Blur tools on the right and do it that way. So let's just play with this until you get it right. Obviously, this is different for every image. Every car image, every, you know, the way the car's going, etc. So I'm just gonna play with this a tiny bit. I think that's looking pretty good. I usually like to stick around 20. I usually get the best effect. Okay, so I'm done with that when I click OK at the top. Now we're gonna do the same thing again. You can do it in the same layer. You can create a new layer if you want, you know, in case you make a mistake or whatever. But so we're gonna go back up to Filter, Blur Gallery, Spin Blur, and we're gonna add it on the back tire. So we're just gonna do the same thing here, guys. It's a great tool from Photoshop. It's incredibly simple to use and really saves you a lot of time trying to do this manually or even trying to capture this in your raw photos. So just keep tinkering with the angles until you get what you like. I'm doing this very quickly for the sake of the video, but even doing this quickly in 5 minutes shows you the different, just how powerful these tools are and the different effects that you can get. So I'm liking it. I think we're good to go. Just for now, I'm gonna click OK. You can see around the edges a little bit rough on that back tire, but obviously you guys can perfect that. But all right guys, check it out. So now that if we put the original image back in here, we've got quite the change. This looks like a car sitting and not doing much, and now all of a sudden we are driving down this track. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.